The new Grand Egyptian Museum in Cairo is amazing, but it's huge. Even the local tour guides are struggling to figure out how do you share this museum with visitors in just a few hours. I've been to the Grand Egyptian Museum, also known as the GEM, 4 times so far. Once I even went for 8 hours on my own. I know, I'm really into it. These are my top 5 items at the Grand Egyptian Museum that you might miss but shouldn't. By the way, I'm Dr. Beth Hart, and I've been doing archaeology in Egypt for over 20 years. I also lead tours to Egypt. And I'm not talking about Tutankhamun's mask. You're not going to miss that. Everybody's going to take you to see it. I'm not even going to go over anything from Tutankhamun's tomb. This is all top 10 items from the rest of the museum. Some of these because they're important, and some just because they're delightful. The first one is known as Tomb 72 from the site of Hierakonpolis. Now, this tomb dates to the pre-dynastic period. The reason this tomb is important is because it shows some of the earliest evidence for status differences in Egypt. At Hierakonpolis, there are 2 cemeteries, one with very simple burials and one with more elaborate burials that have structures built around them and contain a lot of grave goods. Tomb 72 is one of these. Some of these people in this cemetery might be early proto-rulers or rulers of the local area. So in a way, this is Tutankhamun's great predecessor. You'll see in this display, there's an image of the burial and how it was found, and then you can see all the objects that were in place, including some really amazing ivory statues, as well as my favorite, some stone tools. I might be a little bit partial to this display because I started working at Hierakonpolis last year, analyzing some stone tools from their settlement area. You can find it in the section about kingship in the early part of Egypt. The second display that you shouldn't miss at the Grand Egyptian Museum is a display of 2 golden figurines from the site of el-Farkha. This site is in the north of Egypt in the Delta. This is slightly later than Tomb 72. These items are thought to be probably early depictions of rulers or people with a lot of power in this area of Egypt at the time. It could be a ruler and his son, or it could be a person depicted at 2 different stages of life. They were originally wooden figurines covered in gold foil, and they've been reconstructed here. The wood parts have been reconstructed here. They were also found with 2 beautiful flaked stone knives that you see here, and these are really fancy knives. They're not for everyday use. Previously, before a lot of the excavation and archaeological work in this area, we hadn't seen that kind of accumulation of power and wealth in this part of the country. So it made people rethink the complexity of the area and the time. And again, these are important because they're showing this early development of the society and how Egypt is developing to become the ancient Egypt as we know it. You can find these statues in section about society and the early phases of Egypt. The next item you shouldn't miss is outside the boat museum. It's the burial pit of the boats. So the Great Pyramid of Egypt, the pyramid built for King Khufu, had boat burials around it. And these boats were put in specially constructed pits that were lined with limestone. And of course, you're going to see one of the boats from the boat pit. You're not going to miss that. But it's really easy to miss this reconstructed boat pit. But the reason that you should see this is because the limestone slabs that line the pit still bear the traces of red graffiti from the workers who were building this. So this graffiti includes the names of the work groups. They include measurements, and they have the name of the king who was in power at that time, Hetepheres. You can see it in the cartouche here. So Hetepheres was the successor of Khufu, and he was the one that would have been depositing all the goods for Khufu in his tomb and around his tomb for the funeral and for the burial. So you should see this because it's some great evidence that we have that show that ancient Egyptians built the pyramids. We have their writing and the names of the rulers on these monuments. To get to the boat museum and the boat pit, you go outside of the main museum, and it's really easy to miss the boat pit because you can kind of walk up and around to get in the boat museum, but instead you should go down and through this pit, and then you can come up and go in the entrance to the boat museum. The next item you should see is the tomb assemblage of Queen Hetepheres. She was probably the mother of King Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid. And her tomb assemblage was found relatively intact, though possibly not in its original burial location. But this assemblage consists of a whole bedroom set that was originally found taken apart. In the museum, they've reconstructed it and put it back together. So you can see there's a canopy, there's a bed, there's a chair, and there's even a set of jewelry with these amazing silver bracelets. But what you should also see is her alabaster sarcophagus and canopic chest, which is nearby. Now, her mummy wasn't found in the sarcophagus, hence part of the reason why they think this assemblage was moved. But the canopic chest is really interesting because it's quite possibly the earliest canopic chest that we have. A canopic chest is a holder for internal organs removed during the mummification process. And so this is some of the earliest evidence we have of this practice of removing the internal organs in order to help preserve the body when it's mummified. Mummification didn't just start off one day, it developed over time. So this piece is really important for showing the change in the process of mummification. And then, of course, her bedroom assemblage, also wood and plated in gold, is just beautiful and amazing to see. You can find Hetepheres' tomb assemblage in the kingship section of the early part of Egyptian history. The next item is a sculpture of the god Osiris laying on a funerary bed. This item dates to the Middle Kingdom period, also, which is around 2000 to 1500 BC. But it was found inside the tombs of some of the first rulers of ancient Egypt that date to the early dynastic period. And what happened is in the Middle Kingdom, ancient Egyptians associated the site of Abydos with the god of Osiris. And they went and excavated these early tombs and identified which one they thought belonged to the god Osiris. And then they put this sculpture there, and it became a pilgrimage site. The other really interesting thing about this sculpture is that it shows part of the myth of Osiris, Isis, Horus, and Seth. So what you see here is Osiris laying on his funeral bed after he's been killed by his brother Seth, and his wife Isis has collected all the pieces of his body, and she's magically reunited them, and then she is copulating with him in the form of a bird. So that's what you see with the bird on top of Osiris here. You'll find this piece in Gallery 4, the section about beliefs in the Middle Kingdom period. Stay tuned for part 2, where I'll go into 5 more items at the Grand Egyptian Museum that you shouldn't miss. But in the meantime, tell me, what do you think? Which is your favorite, or is there something else that you think people absolutely should not miss?